5G works if you have a 5G phone. So there's no point in rolling out 5G in the rural areas. The criminals are not sleeping, right? Once that is happening, then the issue of vandalism, security concerns, stealing of solar panels, stealing of...
So they're stealing the solar panels now?
Yes. I didn't even know that was a thing. Copper, you name it. So there's that as well. Those were some of the challenges that they faced, that people were like, what is this? What is this name?
Yes.
Right. Well, what are you trying to do? And actually, they were trying to get into the 4G market. And maybe they were ahead of their time.
This episode of ITWeb TV is brought to you in association with ITWeb Security Summit, the must-attend gathering for IT, security and business decision makers. Visit itweb.co.za for more information. Hello, welcome to ITWeb TV. My name is Simnikiwe. Today in studio, I'm joined by Nomvuyiso Batyi. She is the CEO of the Association of Communications and Technology, shortly ACT. Nomvuyiso is here to chat to us about the ICT landscape, what ACT is up to, and since being established in 2022, what have been some of the achievements, and also just to talk to us more about the trends that we are witnessing in the telecom space in South Africa. Nomvuyiso, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Simnikiwe, for having me in studio, and thank you to your readers and the audience at home.
And as I told the audience that you are the CEO of ACT, can you just briefly tell us more about the organization?
Okay, the association itself was first registered in 2021, but it was launched in 2022 correctly. And we have 6 members. The 6 members are Cell C, MTN, Telkom, Vodacom, Rain, and Liquid Intelligent Technologies. These are essentially the 6 network operators that we have in South Africa, the major ones, if I may say. And why we were established, it was more to ensure that the network operators they talk to government, they speak with one voice. That's the first thing. The second thing is to ensure that the ICT ecosystem in itself, that everything that is being done is done and grounded in updated research. So when you're talking to government, you're just not saying things out of the cuff of your head. You must be saying, this is what the evidence shows me. This is what needs to be done. And that's what, in the main, it was established for. Then the third component was to ensure that you link the network operators to as well to people that are scholars, like researchers, insofar as the regulatory framework and policy framework that we have here in South Africa.
Yeah. And since, officially being established in 2022, what would you say have been some of the association's achievements, and what have been some of the challenges that you might have experienced in, running the association?
Okay. I'll say some of the achievements in the main have been more from a stakeholder relationship point of view, wherein we have managed to establish the relationships with people both in the public policy point of view, and as well the telco landscape. Because remember, no one knew who ACT was, so we have to go out there and say, who are we and what do we stand for? And then we did that with the regulators. We did that in the public policy space, within the communications and technology, the department, and from various ministers that have been there. That has been the major thing, just to be able to anchor those relationships and not just have the relationships for the sake of having relationships. To what I said earlier, to actually say when I'm having a conversation with them that this is what we're about, this is what the research is telling us, this is how the ecosystem looks like, these are the challenges that we are faced with as a South Africa. So then you asked, what are the challenges that we are faced with? the main challenge for me is getting buy-in, right? I know it's such a blasé kind of word. So
buy-in from whom?
That's the thing. So you say buy-in. So when you're coming with research and you're demonstrating to somebody that this is what is happening, they have to believe you, right? And they have to say, even though you say, oh, this is what is happening for sure in this specific country, and the trends in South Africa, looking at a report published by the regulator tells us that this is where we're likely to go. The person has to be able to say, okay, yes, I believe you. But the buy-in, when I say the buy-in has been difficult, has been a challenge, is that because people are so used to doing things in a certain way, when you're showing them that this is I'll make the example. So I'll say globally, there's the issue of over-the-top players. And that's the research that we have conducted as ACT. And we are able to demonstrate that the traffic of most network operators in South Africa is mostly being channeled through over-the-top players. And therefore, we are saying that go regulators, look at these challenges to what does this mean from a sustainability of the network operator point of view. We see in other countries that there is a fee that is being paid to actually the upkeep of the network, similar to what South African operators would pay, let's say, to the Universal Service and Access Fund. But now this one is for a network. In other countries, we note that they are providing what is called an interconnection fee, wherein the over-the-top network operator is compelled to sign an interconnection agreement. So you have to choose the regime that it will be suitable to us. But remember, in South Africa, we're used to licensing in a certain manner. And we're not saying people should be licensed, but we're saying they have to be part of the ecosystem because we see this trend. So it has been the challenge. I can go on and on here. Yeah.
You mentioned OTTs, Nomvuyiso, and then I remember there was a time in 2016, I could be mistaken.
Correct.
When we were seeing there was so much noise around it. We even saw hearings in Parliament.
Correct.
And we saw the telcos, we saw the OTT players, I think, if I'm not mistaken, being also presenting their side. Correct. So are you telling me that nothing's changed from that debate that we were having back then to now? Like, nothing.
Nothing. I'm glad you have such a good memory. It was in 2016, and the Minister of Housing, Minister Mahmoud Weluku, was the chairperson of the committee.
Yes.
That's how long it was. You are correct. And we're not really saying, no, we don't want OTTs. Remember, OTTs bring an opportunity. Yes. But we're also saying we also need them to be part of this ecosystem correctly. Be it, let's say, you're having a registration process, or they need to be in South Africa properly. That's what we're saying. And it was in 2016, and nothing has moved since then. It has moved in the other space when it's say audio and audio visual with the broadcasting, the bit. In the telecom space, nothing has, to what my knowledge, nothing has moved.
Then I'm going to ask you, why do you think that's the case? Is it a case of that? Let me let you answer it.
No, I think sometimes we just think some of the things will competition will sort it out. Do you see kind of thing? Or sometimes it's the inability to understand the challenge that is being faced. And if you think about it, in 2016, the problem was foreseen, the challenge was foreseen, but it was not as this big. So those are the things that I think also. I'd say those that when you just think like, no, this is going to pass, and these people are going to find each other. Yes, from an opportunity point of view, some have found each other, but it's more on a commercial level. There's no transparency, so you don't know what is going on there. You'll read in let's say an ITWeb article, so-and-so has entered into a partnership with X, Y, and Z, and you do not know what does that mean in the grander scheme of things. And we are saying, because we know that from a consumption point of view, South Africans are consuming more over-the-top services than like normal services that you would have on a basic telephone. But on average, as you know, most people, what I'm trying to say is that most people hardly make, and you'll see even with the financials of our members that, especially those that are listed, most people do not hardly make voice calls, except let's say you want to book a doctor's appointment or you want to book somebody that has a line. In most instances, we're using over-the-top services, right? And that's what, I mean, even coming here, that's what I did. So yeah, that's the reality.
And to pick up on what you're saying, Nomvuyiso, is it our regulation always comes into like, there's always like criticism? Do you think that then like you said, people think, or the relevant parties think things will sort themselves out, but then that's not the case. So do you think there needs to be more vigor in terms of how certain areas within the sector are regulated, or like that there's more action, I suppose, from the people that make the laws? And
not necessarily action. Let me say maybe not necessarily action in the form of regulation, but each and every regulator in South Africa, even globally, they have the capability to look at market trends, right? To look as to what is happening in the country, not only be focused on the 6 licensed providers in their midst, but to say, check, what are the trends, what is happening? And in that, once we do that, it assists even the policy maker in making fit for purpose policy, right? So there is nothing that stops a regulator tomorrow to say, I'm going to do research on 6G services, right? Because we don't have, let's say, a framework at this particular point to license 6G. You are allowed to do the research, right? And in doing the research, you advise the policymaker on what policy intervention should be in place. But to actually allow a situation wherein there is no body of work being done that informs policy interventions moving forward, I don't think it's doing anyone any justice. And I'm not saying there should be a hardcore stance on people being overly regulated. There are very simple things that can be done, like registration of services. When you come into a country, you register, you say who you are as a person. No one is going to say, do not go left, you go right. But those are the basic principles that need to be there. If you think about it, those that are licensed are put under BBBE legislation, right? They are taxed in some instances, actually in most instances, sorry. And you find that there are people that come because they don't have presence in South Africa. We don't know what's going on with them. So it talks to the entire system, how the system works within our context, that we should not only be focused on the ones that we see when they're driving on the freeway. That's it.
And I'm laughing because I can just see them on the freeway. So the association, like, would you say, like you've mentioned OTTs, is that what you guys are mainly focusing at the moment? Not mainly, but like that's what you want to drive research around, debate or open up conversation in terms of how do the members that are within ACT and the OTT players move forward in a more, level playing field?
So we're done with the paper. We just will be publishing it in the next 2 months. We've had a roundtable around OTT. A lot of people did not come, even those that we invited from OTT space. And we asked further questions after that. Then we developed a paper which we'll be publishing. You will share it with yourselves. But that's not one of the main things. One of those things that we're doing. One of them that are important, I'll say, especially leading to what we want to drive, because everyone knows that the world is revolving around the internet. I'm sure you've seen the issue of 2G, 3G sunsetting. And within ACT, the thing that we're doing is to say, it's good that 2G, 3G is going to be sunset because network operators can refarm the spectrum and the likes. However, there's one thing that we're forgetting. There are people that will be left behind, right? So if you think of the lower end...
So we're looking at, this is, sorry to interrupt, this is within the context of South Africa. People
South Africa,
left behind.
yes, South Africa. Yes, so if you think about it, you go here, 4 ways, Diepsloot. Don't have to go far. Go to rural South Africa, KZN, Limpopo, you name it. Most people are still using 2G devices, isn't it? Yes, network operators are obliged to still carry those people till the last device is not working. But if you're sunsetting 2G and 3G, there has to be a plan as to how much and where are these people going to get a 4G handset. We're not even talking about 5G here. I'm talking about a 4G handset. If you think, so I'll make a very mean joke. So where I'm from, that phone is called a SASA phone, right? Social security. Because every month end, you have to buy either a charger or a new phone. So those people are going to be left behind. Whilst we're saying, okay, fine, each and every network operator, I'm sure you would have seen, has a plan to migrate from 2G and 3G to 4G. Others are saying, we're closing, the 3G is going to be the first network, we're closing. But no one is asking the question that says, what will happen to those people that are still using 2G, and when the 2G handset is not working? Because a 4G handset in South Africa is not affordable for those people. Those people that are paid social grant, those that rely on government, and those people that are on the lower end of the margin. So what will happen? Because in South Africa, a 4G handset has been classified as a luxury good from a SARS point of view. And therefore, I think the cheapest 4G at the last time we did our research was sitting at 1,800. That is that's a lot of money for somebody who's used to buying a device between the most expensive being 250 Rand to, let's say, 450 Rand at the most. So I say, yes, we do not want anyone to be left behind in South Africa. We agree with this, it's quite exciting, but we need a plan. And why it's important, Simdikiwe, that we have the plan. You know what happened to digital migration, right? We know, and we do not want that repeat, that people will say, I don't have access to my TV has been switched off. I do not know what to do. We want that there should be a plan, and that plan talks to South African Receiver of Revenues, talks to DTIC, talks to DCDT, which is Communications and Digital Technologies, talks to ICASA, talks to all these parties to say, how do we make sure that there's a cheaper handset for those people, so that a 4G device is not, and its components is not classified as a luxury good. And also, how do we make sure that there's a scheme that will actually assist people to make sure that they get the 4G device? Because we know a lot of people that cannot afford that kind of device. Yeah.
1,800 it's a lot of money.
It is.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
We sunset 2G, 3G, and then people are expected to have 1,000 Rand, 800 Rand phone. So how do we fix the issue around the pricing? What needs to happen there?
So a couple of things that need to happen. One is for consideration that 4G devices and their components not be classified as luxury goods insofar as receiver of revenue and national treasury. But we know that might not be the case because we've seen the budget vote. That's the first one. The second big one is that if ICASA and South Africa is serious about sunsetting, ICASA has to start pulling out the 2G, 3G certificate so that no new devices are coming into the market. Third is, that's why I'm saying TTIC have a strategy as to how do we have a subsidized handset within the South African market that people can afford, which is a 4G device. And that talks to a number of parties. If you think of the Universal Service and Access Agency, the funds that people are paying to, how that, for me, it's as ACT was saying, that needs a lot of work. We've done a basic research on it as to what needs to happen, but we believe somebody can improve on that and say maybe you forgot one of the important partners, and this is how the implementation needs to happen. And we're saying the implementation framework actually itself needs to be run and be checked with by CASA, because they are the regulator, right? That to ensure that every step of the way the sunsetting happens in a proper and appropriate manner, so that we do not come 20 years from now, which has happened with digital migration, we're still discussing the same thing. We're just saying, let's plan better. That's the point of what we're saying with 2G and 3G.
Better planning.
Yeah.
And are there specific implementation timeframes that you'd say would be ideal,
So we know there's a date that have been put, that have been announced, and we are saying, okay, those dates are there. Let's first sit down and check whether this is possible with the regulator and everyone else. And we know, for instance, with 3G, network operators have surpassed even the deadline that has been put already. And just to give you an idea what's happening with 2G, 3G, 3G also supports a lot of machine-to-machine.
Yeah.
So like your car tracking device, some of the banks are using 2G. Some of your bigger parastatals are using 2G. So those will still be supported long term. But and these are people with the money, but also it's very difficult to change such big machinery overnight. So those will be supported long term. That's the proposal we're putting. But the people that are likely to be disrupted the most are end users. Okay. Let's have a plan there as to how should this be done, and how will we make sure that they are not left behind. Because if we don't have a plan and we rush, it's easy for my members to just refarm spectrum and then put other things. But if those people are left behind, then that means they will always, as they have been left behind already, they will always be left behind throughout. So let's have better planning. Yeah.
There's also been the conversation around local production. Is that feasible? Like of the
I love it. Love it. So as I'll be honest with you. So we've considered that. We even met with some of the people in Midrand, I will not name, that are very famous in smaller towns. Okay. People use their handsets. And we even checked with bigger manufacturers that have had affordable handsets at 4G, and we checked also with neighboring countries that have had local manufacturing. We checked 2 countries within Africa. One is here in SADC, the other one is up on top, east. And the reality is this: no one has a real local manufacturing strategy. They still rely on Asia. They still, that's the reality, even those that are saying we are manufacturing locally. And the thing that we could deduce from this was that because Asia is a big market, so we figured that when you're going to manufacture a mass handset, you have to have a big population, like you'll have, let's say, in India, in China, if you're looking at those kind of markets. And here in South Africa, if that were to happen, at a minimum, there has to be at least an open trade within SADC itself, because the numbers of South Africa in by themselves, looking at how handsets are, when we're looking at them, I don't think it's feasible for anyone to come and pump in. It's a very good idea, extremely, extremely good idea. But whether it's sustainable, I don't think so. You'll recall there was a company in KZN next to the airport. Dubai Trade Port. I suspect something's seen because you just don't have the numbers and the financial muscle to carry such an operation within South Africa. Yes, there are people. There's one company that we visited, but also their handset is not cheap, 4G, but it's considered lower end of the market. But yeah, it's possible, but they have to have a bigger pool of subscribers coming in because that's how bad it is. No.
And I suppose if you're coming into a market like South Africa that already has a couple of established brands what I've noticed about consumers is that very brand conscious and besides that, but people are like, no, I'm used to X.
Yes.
Not Twitter, formerly Twitter, but just like X, company X.
Yeah.
And then, no, I don't know this new brand. I'm not going to try it, even though it comes it's cheaper. It's providing similar services to what my current device is doing. But then, I don't know, it could be right. It's a tough sell.
It might be. And then you saw within that company that was at Dubai Trade Port, those were some of the challenges that they faced, that people were like, what is this? What is this name?
Yes.
Right? Well, what are you trying to do? And actually, they were trying to get into the 4G market. And maybe they were ahead of their time. Or maybe, not only that, maybe the other things were happening. But I can tell you for certain, there was, within the target market of the mass producing, I don't think they were going to make money because the numbers from a South African point of view, it means your handset still will have to be expensive. Okay. You still have to compete with those that are established. There's no way to undercut because everyone gets the components from the same place.
Yeah.
And all the components are luxury goods. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
It is.
Nomvuyiso, I know that you've been in the industry for a number of years. You've had your time as acting DG in the department. Mm-hmm. You've been with the FPB in the past and Competition Commission as well.
Yes.
Your days. Yeah. And like a number of other, entities that I'm not going to mention all of them now. But I want to hear from you as someone who's been in the industry for so long. What changes have you noticed over the years in terms of, the local ICT sector, where we are currently, and where do you think we still need to go?
So, okay, I'll start off by saying, as you said, I've been here for quite a while. In terms of the changes, I'll say the one exciting thing that happened within my career, the thing that I just thought this was the most everyone needed to be here, was during lockdown.
Okay.
And wherein ICASA issued the temporary spectrum, and we're able to connect and we're able to hear each other during our virtual calls. And I thought with that urgency and speed, we would have learned something. I just thought that was the most exciting time for me. And the entire lockdown period, I just thought we were very innovative as a country. If you think about it, from the Competition Commission, you name it, everything was just happening. And we sort of went back to our old ways. And from the things that I see from that everyone keeps trying, that I think might be a success in the medium to long term, there's new product offerings that are happening. I'm noticing it's just one of those things that, like the fintech space that everyone is getting into. So you see somebody advertising something new, and I'm like, okay, I didn't know that. And I think for me, it's especially for a sector that that continues to try to innovate and be adaptable. It's just that my take is that we have, as South African, we've become slower in terms of uptake. I'll say that we're more reluctant, and that may be due to the economic situation that we find ourselves. But I still say, hands down, the period that was the most exciting for me was lockdown. By the way, I was working during lockdown. I only had leave for one weekend, Easter weekend. And I thought from this period, we're going to be like, wow. No, honestly, I was so excited during lockdown. And we just went back to our old ways. So that's why I was making the example about the 2G and 3G. And I was hoping that we have learned our lessons with the broadcasting digital migration in terms of the slowness. And for instance, if you think of things that are within the sector, when you say connected, unconnected, the spectrum was licensed, and then now there's going to be social obligations. How do we connect the schools better? How do we connect the clinics better? We cannot do things as we have done it previously. It takes us 10 years to connect people because we can't get hold of people in government. And those are the things for me that I say, in order for us to make a difference as the ICT sector, is to ensure that the customer that is still still young and still at school is the one that will grow with you moving forward. And those are the things that I'm saying, because it's fine for my members to make money. I want them to make money so that they pay my fees. But I still want the rural child to be connected. I want them to have the same benefits and access that I have insofar as education. And the only way to do that is through technology. And I believe that with us working together, we can do that. And to this end, we establish a project management office to make sure that the entire value chain of connecting kids and connecting clinics is done properly. And those will be led by the division of communications, going back to ICASA, just to demonstrate to them that we don't want to be dragging our feet as it has happened previously, that, oh no, this doesn't belong there, this belongs there. And it's one of those things that I thought, from an integrity point of view, if something good came out of the spectrum, and we must have something that is worthy for South Africans to say, yes, this makes sense. Now, I don't know how old you are, but just to say, we used to have community service telephones, the containers.
Yes.
Yes, those
ones, yes, yeah.
Right?
Oh, okay.
Those are obligations. I'm talking about that massive scale. That was the first time that obligations were implemented successfully. And now it's something different. It's about connecting schools, community colleges, TVETs, and clinics. Something of that scale, of that visibility, that makes changes in communities. And you'll know this because you didn't know it was a community service telephone. You know it is a container.
I'm thinking back to the ones I used to see. I never...
Yes, it was an obligation when they received the license. So with the 30 years of democracy, I mean, as a city, we believe that we can make that change, right? That the two of my members are celebrating 30 years because they were licensed in 1994. Something's got to change. Something has got to change to say, we used to see the red, yellow, the containers. We have to see that level of connectivity at schools. Yes, it comes with other things, but at least we have to be able to demonstrate that. Yeah.
You mentioned, connectivity clinics and schools. Do you also not think then that there's a lot of projects that are in silos? There's a lot of, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. There's no coming together. So you don't really, for me, I find that you don't really see what actually has been done, because everyone is working alone and they're going into the communities alone. And then it's like, so how many have we actually connected? How many schools are connected? Not just connected, but like, is it actually working? Because it's one thing to say we've connected, but if you don't see it, or even the staff and the teachers and the learners are not gaining any, they're like, yeah, it's here, but we don't. Most of the time, especially for me, I'm from the Eastern Cape, and they say, yeah, no, one of your members came, they connected us, but okay, so you connected? No, we don't know.
I like what you're saying, because I'll start off and then I'll respond. In 2021, I went to an area just outside Free State. I think it's called Bagersford. And I was still a project management officer at Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. Went there to check at the previous obligations that were rolled out from 2004 to about 2014. We got to a school. This school, I know you're young, you won't know this. This school teaches CAT. CAT is like a technology subject for high school kids. We found a container locked, under locked and key. So we arrive a week before the principals, we call them principals, arrive, like principals as leaders in government, like ministers and the likes. So the previous principal of the school retired, and this school was chosen because before COVID, it used to be a top performing school. During COVID, it became the lowest performing school. And we just didn't know why. So we went there with various government departments and found this room locked with iPads, with this. We had to call CETA to come and fix. I think they only managed to fix some of the iPads. We also called one of our members to come and make it work. And here's the story. Hence here's the, no, we couldn't use it. Yes, one of my members now came. They launched this, but here there are rules. The district office has to give a go-ahead, because this is not our equipment. And we've been waiting for the district office to give a go-ahead. This town is in the middle of nowhere.
Give the go-ahead to what? To use it?
To use. Because because iPad, remember, it's easy to get lost. If you get lost, what are we going to do?
Okay.
So hence, this time around, we're saying, let's have a project management office that will report directly to the DG, that will report as well to ICASA, in order to ensure that all the role players from local, district, provincial are involved, right? So that no one is saying, no, we have this, but we don't know what to do with it. Because if you just focus on connectivity without ensuring that somebody is going to be accountable and responsible and ensure that it is being used effectively, then you wouldn't have achieved anything. So fortunately, we've sold this to both the CASA and the department. So it's one of those things that we said we want to commit to it. Our members are committed to it. Also from a sustainability point of view, let's say one of my members does launch and put this thing there, and then the school says, actually, we think we can do better. This is basic. Let's top up. Let's do whatever. So that's we want to do it in that manner at this particular point. So that there is no silo. Because you see every day somebody is launching this and the other, and I'm like, you can tell these people are from Gauteng. They know nothing about rural things. And because we know what happens there, I like the fact that you know that they will actually lock it with la laptop. Do not touch it.
Yeah.
Do not touch it. And people think we're exaggerating, but that's the reality that happens. Yeah.
It's actually we laugh now, but it's actually sad. Like, I also just want to go back to what you mentioned around of like fintech. I know that there's also from some of your members as well, where they're now offering like kind of like, it's, what do they say? They want to, the banks want to be telcos and the telcos want to be banks.
Yes.
So from you, what, not necessarily what your members are doing, but what do you think of just that, that cross-pollination type of...
Remember the thing with everyone, they want to get your attention. Everyone wants to get your attention. And I understand with banks the difficulty, because since lockdown, no one wants to go to the bank. I mean, I don't remember the last time I went to the bank. And I understand with my members as well that because your revenues are declining in your traditional sense of business when it's voice, you have to look at alternative ways of making sure that you have revenue. And by that revenue, having benefits. So you'll see most of them, they're not only offering fintech, they offer fintech with a lot of
added.
Yes, like partnerships with other people. And actually, I'm just thinking, perhaps because I always think, I know that with younger people, it works very well. My niece will tell me, I got this thing for free, and it's like a good deal. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know that was possible. So I see that because banks are struggling to get hold of you, they're doing this. I see that because my members are struggling as well from revenue decline, that they are looking at the alternative. So it's more about being adaptable, and what is it that you are bringing that is different to an end user, because at the end of the day, there's only so many, I'll say, customers that you can try and get into the market. And we have seen, if you come up with something very innovative, people will follow you. The One Bank has just proven it to us in South Africa. People will just join you, and we never thought it's possible. So people must continue to always evolve. Yeah.
Do you think there's space for another telco in South Africa?
I say this, the market in itself currently, how it looks like, there is space for it, and I'll tell you why. That if somebody sees an opportunity to invest, yes, but the way things are at this point, we're more likely moving to consolidations, even if the Competition Commission doesn't approve, because you can see, I don't even need to tell you can see who is shrinking day in, day out, and every year. You can see who's struggling. So what is the next best thing? Somebody's either they take over or they close down. So which one will be the best option? And why we find ourselves in those. So for me, it's either a CASA or I think it would be the ministry starts as like I say, an inquiry. CASA likes inquiries on the state of the ICT sector, especially from a financial point of view, as to how attractive it will be for a person to come in, which is something that ICASA does very well. I know, for instance, in the broadcasting space, they do that very well. Before they license MSG and everyone else, they'll do what is the state? Is there a appetite for somebody to come in, and which markets are they likely to succeed? Okay. And I think they do it wonderfully there. I have not seen it done in the telco space, and I think it's one of those things that CASA can do and check the state really from a financial infrastructure point of view. What is the likely best scenario? However, I also understand why it might be difficult, because to bring in an investor currently in South Africa from a telco is very difficult. And I'll tell you why I'm saying it's difficult. This is stage 4, load shedding. Unlike when an investor goes to Nigeria, Ghana, they go there knowing that there is no bread. Here, we have a situation wherein when you see, instead of how much capital investment is being made. So, yeah, there is that space. It's just that ICASA needs to do its homework properly. I almost said it in Afrikaans.
Huiswerk.
Yeah.
It's to Pretoria.
Yeah.
Okay, on the load shedding part, I know that some of the members, obviously associations members, are doing a lot of around because diesel costs. I know you've also been vocal about that. But they're also moving to try and, be so more using renewable energy, solar, and, as backup. What are, how do you, are there improvements within that? Is it something that they, making strides in, or is it just,
I'll say
a tough one?
It's very tough. I don't to give the cop out say yes or no, and I say when I say yes or no. Some of let's say most of the members have actually done a deliberate act of making sure that they invest heavily on renewable energy, and they invest heavily on making sure that they have batteries, they have diesel, they have nano generators, they have all those things. But at the same time, the criminals are not sleeping, right? Once that is happening, then the issue of vandalism, security concerns, stealing of solar panels, stealing of...
So they're stealing the solar panels now?
Yes. I didn't even know that was a thing. Copper, you name it. So there's that as well. So I believe that insofar as taking the members themselves, even the South Africans in general, forward, there's a very concerted effort to make sure that there is alternative power solution. But there's this issue of security, the issue of law enforcement. I must say there are pockets wherein we've seen there's been effective law enforcement in this area. I can think of, there was a case recently that I saw in Gqeberha that had I'm glad I said that name properly, that had the highest years of sentence for prosecution of somebody who stole batteries. But it's the whole chain around it. So if you're a telco and you don't have, not say even any business in South Africa, if you don't have a generator, alternative power solutions such as solar, a battery, we know that the other UPSs cannot carry other buildings. I'm sorry, he would not survive. And at that, they still have to build the 5G network. So you will see that the speed at which people are building 5G is not the same because they had to channel the funds elsewhere. It's not what you would have expected. So when, say, 2021, when they were coming in, they were launching, the speed is not as like before in terms of rolling out the 5G network. And this is a number of things that causes that, one being load shedding, the other 5G works if you have a 5G phone. So there's no point in rolling out 5G in the rural areas. It have to have I like back in the day, you have to have a device before network comes to you. So yeah, but they have made a lot of investment in terms of alternative power solutions. They are involved in, so for instance, the Competition Commission came up with the block exemption. They're involved in some of the arrangements with Eskom in terms of what else can come as a solution in terms of capacity to the grid, which I think most South African companies are doing. So it's just, yeah, load shedding. It's one of those things that we're not doing everything. We look at it. So we have a pillar in our strategy that says a industry solution for power and security, because we realize that the security is linked to power. Yeah.
When there's no power, that's when the compromise would happen. On the 5G that you mentioned, you like you said that sometimes obviously you need to have a 5G phone to be able to if 5G is being rolled out in your area, let's assume. But now funds have to be channeled elsewhere. Are your members kind of rolling back a bit on, 5G rollout where they have what? So
they can't, even if they wanted to, because just think about it. So many people are launching a new phone.
yeah,
You get a 20,000 rands back, which I didn't know phones are that expensive. So they
price
can't.
of another one today.
Yeah,
Then I was like, whoa.
exactly. So they can't slow down. But here lies the problem. Those that have been left behind will continue being left behind because 5G, how it's rolled, no matter how government can think of it, they can force network operators to start rolling out in rural areas. It will not work. It has to follow the device. So the more people that have that device, then that's where it's going to work. So you'll always continue to see rolling out of 5G networks in urban areas as how network design has always been in South Africa, because there's no point in rolling out 5G when there is more sheep than 5G device in an area. When you say, when you go home, you're the only person that has a 5G device in that area. So those are the things that is happening. There is not a scaling down, but it's not as how it was planned. And how, as I was saying, the year of lockdown for me, I was so excited looking at the investment, looking at how people were launching. Even when I remember after lockdown, I went to Rwanda to have a talk, and we're the first country in Africa to launch 5G. And this was like a big deal. Like, we're the first country to launch 5G. And I was like, wow, because each and every report tells you this. But now, because these things, because it's network to network work, it needs electricity for it to work. Yes, 5G uses less electricity, but the money is coming from the same pot. Yeah.
Sure. Another one I want to, just touch on with you is around, we're seeing a lot of satellite-based internet player. Yeah, like your Starlinks. This project, is it Kuiper or Kuiper with Amazon?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? Just to hear. And I don't know if ACT is doing any.
We are.
What are you guys doing?
Infancy. Still at our infancy. It's good for people to have choice. That's what I'm going to start off with. But equally, the person, before he or she goes to a country, you register. And when I say register, you become part of the regulated framework. And we're not saying have the same terms and conditions, but you must be known. And it's not, and I want to put it out there, it's not the first time that South Africa sees a satellite-based party coming into South Africa. Yes, but the issue is that most of those, it's just that now we're having load shedding, we're having all these challenges, and we're starstruck about it. Yes, I use the word starstruck. And all of them do not want to be part of the local compliance program. That has been the issue. And if you think about it, compliance is expensive. Compliance is cumbersome. Compliance says you must share. Compliance says you must interconnect with people. You must connect rural people. You must make sure schools are connected. You must have quality of service. You must have this. And there's reporting issues. I have not even spoken to localization in terms of triple B. So there are all those things that even the smallest licensee in South Africa that is an ISP that is licensed by CASA follows. And therefore, that's what I'm saying, it's not the first time. People have to follow that. And others that have come in, they are partnering with local companies just to make sure that they are compliant, which is, I think, for me, it's a step in the right direction. But however, I believe that ICASA has made its voice heard on this issue, and correctly so, that you have to be part of the regulatory regime. Fortunately, in South Africa, like you are part of the regulatory regime elsewhere in the world, you cannot come in and then all of a sudden when something happens, the first person you point to is the regulator. But where were you? How can this person come here? And they're like, we don't know these people. So it's more along those lines. Yeah.
Would you say that space is kind of like lobby intensive? It's like there's a lot of lobbying happening.
Every space is lobby intensive. Look, I am a lobbyist at heart. So everyone, but it's very difficult to change a regulatory regime being not having a hands-on approach. So I see this thing that some people are just hoping through, consumer pressure, I'll use that word, consumer pressure, things are just going to happen. And maybe in other countries, but here it doesn't happen that way. Not in our regulated space. I mean, maybe we'll have this debate for years to come, but CASA has made their point and said, you must become part of the regulatory regime. This is the things that you need to do when you want. So, yeah.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
And just maybe as we round off our conversation, just to hear from you, what are some of the what would be your highlights that you'd like to see happening locally in terms of the sector? What do you look forward to?
So because my strength is regulation, the thing that I would like to see happening here in South Africa is to have a fit for purpose policy and regulatory framework. What I mean by that, I mean not regulate, come up with policy because you think this person may do this in the future, but you plan as to what is it that South Africa should look like in the next few years. What is the current market? What do we think it should look like in the future? And I think the way that we have been doing policy and regulation since 1994, that's why I say I'm hoping with 30 years of democracy things are going to change, is that we look at those that have been invited to apply for a license, let's say invitation to apply, they have a big banner for you, and we always want to regulate those people, whereas the landscape has changed totally. It has changed totally just right in front of us. And I say the landscape has changed totally. You see it you saw, I think you ran the story a couple of weeks ago, what is happening at MultiChoice. We didn't see that happening. We're just all taken by surprise. But that's just the nature of how the world is going. So we're just saying, regulator, be aware that this is the reality, that we're part of the global economy. And all policies and regulations have to be fit for purpose. It should not be easy for somebody to come in and there are no checks and balances in place. Even if you say, actually, Simnikwe doesn't need a license. I've done my due diligence. It's fine that she just registers. She's here in South Africa. I'm fine. She can move on. That is fine. But just have a fit for purpose regulation policy framework. Do not change things in piecemeal fashion. I know a lot of people don't like this word. They don't just change things for the sake of changing because you think this may happen. Have evidence. You must use a regulation that is evidence-based. You must use policy that is evidence-based. And I think we haven't. And then I guess it's because the same people that have been drafting are the same till the part of the global picture and what is happening in South Africa is not readily available at their fingertips. That's why I'm making the example about your neighbors here in Randburg, because that reality can happen with anyone in South Africa. It is the reality that people see when they see an opportunity, and especially some of our members are growing within the African continent. They'll see an opportunity. They'll say, this is what we can do from an investment point of view, and we might be left behind as South Africans. And I mean it literally, that everywhere else things happen and they work, from a harmonization of policy, from making sure things are fit for purpose, and we're not able to internalize and look as to what does this mean for us. That's why I made the example that I went to Rwanda, such a small country, the things that they are doing, how they are intentional about fit for purpose. You may not agree with their approach, but it's how it works for them. It works for them. So it's the same principle that is required. Yeah.
You mentioned something about the same people that were making laws in 94.
Possible.
I didn't want to be ageist.
No, that's not. No, because because things have not, for me, or maybe the thinking has not changed. Things have not changed in terms of, I mean, if you looked at the new bill that was published last year, it might have been in 2003. So even the policy that was consulted on next generation spectrum, things that court cases have been decided on, those things that thou shall not go to this level, and you see them in 2023. Last year was 2023. You're like, okay, something is
a mess here.
Yeah, something is very messless. So there is something that we are missing somewhere. So that it has to be fit for purpose. Always do your homework. Check what is happening. Check against the cases that we have lost. Check against the cases that we have won, as to, from a drafting, what do I do? And then over and say, how does the ecosystem look like today? What is happening globally? And that is the work that I don't see happening. I'm sure maybe you'll tell me if you have, that you must be able to do that hard work before you come up with legislation or regulation.
Sure. Nomvuyiso, before when we were having our conversation, we were talking about RICA and what you guys, the round table that you're planning. Can you chat to us more about what's happening there? What are you seeing? What are some of the challenges?
Okay. We've noted that as the association now, that we've noted that there's an issue with customer or subscriber registration in South Africa. And we've noted, reading newspaper articles, the things that are being said around terrorism and all those things. And then we said, okay, let's define what is the challenge, who are the role players, what needs to happen. So if you think about it, there's a similar kind of provision in the financial services, which is FICA. They call it Know Your Customer, KYC. So we said as ACT, okay, let us start back and say, what was the intention of RICA? The things that can be resolved with RICA as things currently stand. So we were planning to have a roundtable already last year, but that did not happen. So we're having it, I think, end of March. We will be partnering with another association in this regard. And however, there are concerns insofar as RICA discussion, which we are writing to the Competition Commissioner, because we recognize that RICA, not RICA, subscriber numbers themselves are a currency, and not only are they currency, are something that is used for investment purposes and certain decisions. And we do not want we sit with our members and then we're found wanting from a competition law point of view. So that's the first thing. Then secondly, we did take note of the RICA Amendment Bill, which deals with the journalist thing, the Bongane matter. We're hoping that next round we'll be able to look at a section that deals with RICA for purposes of, say, network operators. Just to give you an example, there's a provision that, considering how migration happens in South Africa, the provision of addresses, right? If you think about it, the schedule of informal settlements, sort of to say it like that. What does it mean in practical terms? Because if you put a provision that is difficult for people to comply with, you open doors for other things. So we have come up with a concept note as to how we see the RICA question. I'll share that with you. And who are the role players that we would like to see? If you think about it, Department of Home Affairs, because if you're coming here, be it you have a passport, be it you're a refugee, you have to register somewhere. South African Police Services, Department of Justice. We know Department of Justice is a department overall oversees the legislation. We also wanted to extend to NGOs that deal especially with people that might be marginalized, because sometimes you sort of forget in that space because we're not in communities. And as well, people like community policing forums, those people, they know better what happens in communities. So it's still, we have the concept paper, maybe we have the wrong end of the stick, but it's a start for us to have the conversation. But we will not have the conversation till we speak to the competition commissioner, so that she understands that we want to comply with the law, but in us complying with the law, there might be challenges. What safeguards do we have to put in place beforehand in this regard? And just for like good measure, we just said PEPs, information regulator might also be required, because subscriber number is a very delicate, privacy issue. So I'll share that paper with you. Will do.
Well, that'll be interesting to see and read.
So what's your interest in RICA?
No, because...
But I'll tell you for free, there are no numbers. There's no SIM card that is not registered in South Africa. It might be registered to somebody else. But
the thing is, I remember I was listening to, there was a parliament briefing where they said that obviously the idea is around the proliferation of SIM cards, because they're like, how does one person have like 10 SIM cards to their name? And the fact that if we have a RICA law, isn't RICA that you're supposed to be my number to one person? And obviously you can have, but the argument was around fraud and crime, that these SIM cards are used, fraudulently and for fraudulent activities and what have you. And then, but it's registered to my name, but someone is has so many SIM cards. But I'm only aware. Yes, I'm only aware of my number and my one and I RICA'd with my details. Then it's like, but then how did this person get this information? And then the argument was like, there's a syndicate. There's a syndicate.
Sorry to laugh. So there's no issue with. I said there's no. There's nothing stopping people from getting multiple SIMs, right? What is wrong is we're in the crime element, which is the fraud with your SIM, with your details being
personal information being used.
And that in itself talks to how at the distribution channel either information is handled. One, secondly, knowing how the scourge of ID theft and identity theft is. It is happening. I'm not going like the issue of identity theft, but that is beyond the scope of RICA as it currently stands.
Okay.
Hence, we are saying we want to come up with other solutions, but before we converge, we need to go ahead. So if you think about it, it's not quite rocket, like it's not quite clear. But if you think about it, in banks, you have X number of banks. And I'm aware of 2 banks that don't have physical branches, right? And out of those 2 banks that do not have physical branches, they comply with FICA guidelines differently, and they are using a different system. However, banks do not have an informal market. Now, we have to be sensitive to the informal market as to how, because there are people that are employed selling SIM cards. So how do we deal with the informal market in the taxi rank, in the, not even the spaza shop, those ones that are walking around? They say, what's your ID number? Okay. And then they take a picture of your ID number, of your ID kind of thing. So those are the kind of solutions that we want to come up with, so that a lot of people are not left out. And when you'll see, we're really touching on the informal sector, because we know there might be something that we are missing there, because the informal sector has its own rules that is not known by everyone. Banks do not have an informal sector. Now we have.
So those are some of the issues that some of the areas you have to consider.
Correct.
Nomvuyiso, thank you so much for your time. It was a lovely conversation, insightful conversation. We appreciate you making the time to come and chat to us.
Oh, thank you, Simniku. It's been lovely being here. Also, as you can tell, I love ICT, anything related to it. And I thank you for having ACT in studio.
Thank you. We'd be talking the whole day.
Yeah.
That was Nomvuyiso Batyi. She is the CEO of ACT. For more on these, follow the ITWeb TV channel. This episode of ITWeb TV is brought to you in association with ITWeb Security Summit, the must-attend gathering for IT, security and business decision makers. Visit itweb.co.za for more information.